As I call Dean Ottino up on stage, I wanted to start with this beautiful photograph from NASA, which was created by NASA technologists, scientists, and artists to take all of the record of pictures of the planet of Mercury into one tableau. And while it's certainly rigorous from a scientific perspective, it's also inspiring as a piece of art. So with that, I'll transition to Dean Julio Ottino.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you. So I'm delighted to be here and share the view of this book, which appeared 2 days ago, the NEXUS. Yeah, my day job is Dean of Engineering. I have transformed education engineering, but this is much, much bigger, okay? Much, much bigger. I don't have to repeat in here all the problems that are afflicting society now. You can come up with your own list. Could be endless. In fact, you could collapse them in some categories. In fact, every talk that we heard so far has been about facing one of these big, big problems. And the list can go on and on and on. And from this list, you can even isolate the problems that have to do with connectivity. Connectedness is great, but it also has some drawbacks. So based on that, this is kind of the manifesto of the book. And the book is about two things: augmenting thinking spaces. We all have a pair of glasses that we were trained with. We are happy with that pair of glasses. The question is, can you acquire a second pair? And how to navigate the complex world of today. That happens, complexity, chaos. I was one of those chaos guys very early on. It happens to be my area of research. So at the end of the day, the book is about two things. It's leadership and innovation, and applies both to individuals and teams. So, and the two themes, and I have 13 minutes to kind of explain the themes, are augmentation of thinking and complexity. And some things that I'm going to say will be well known to all of you, and some things probably will be new to you. I don't have to explain this curve to anybody here, okay? How a technology starts and matures. And I could show pictures like this of any technology. This has to be about information, how to store it. But the whole point of this that I'm trying to make is, if I show you this picture, or even if you're coming from an outer planet and you ask me questions, you will be able to assign a direction of time, progress, an arrow of time and progress. And sometimes there are quantum jumps. This happens to be Harley-Davidson's. The Harley-Davidson Museum is north of Chicago. The Harley-Davidson 1912, 1913, one cylinder, a leather belt, two cylinders, a chain belt. That was a big jump. But nothing preparing motorcycles like this and making the sound exactly right for Harley-Davidson prepare you to go to the next incarnation of the e-bikes, okay? So what I'm going to try to hammer first is the thinking modes that go behind art, technology, and science. So I'm picking those three things because they are the three largest areas of domain in humanity where there is storage, knowledge, and creativity. And I'm going to use, and this is great that we're doing this in Miami, because Miami used to be nowhere in the art world, and now it's at the top, visual art. And by visual art, I mean mostly modern and contemporary art. And why is that? Because contrary to what most people believe, the evolution of creativity in art is easy to trace. The trail survives. So for example, these are sketches from Guernica, Picasso. The final Guernica used to be at the MoMA, now it's at the Reina Sofia. He did about 43 of these, documented by his mistress, Dora Maar, and we know how final Guernica emerged. And I could show you these paintings done all in between 1910, 1970 or 80. And unless you really have taken a course in history of art, you will not be able to put them in a chronological order. There is no way. There's some technology here. If more technology was in here, you could probably do it. The oldest one, by the way, is the one in the lower left, Kandinsky. The Basquiat is upper left, is the most modern one. In fact, there are two paintings that are by the same person, the woman looking in the back, and the one immediately to the right, that Gerhard Richter. There is more technology when you design chairs. Every artist and designer has had a compulsion of designing a chair. But even if I ask you, tell me which one is the oldest and no one's put in order, you cannot do it, okay? So this is how technology evolves. Actually, a succession of sigmoidal things. You don't wait for one technology to appear before you go into the next one. And eventually, if you smooth them out, you go into what typically could be technology and science. Science evolves in small steps, revolutions are rare, and art is like this. So that's why art is, okay? In fact, evolution in art, you cannot talk about evolution in art. Everything is going on at once. And that quote from Peter Skjeldahl from the New Yorker is pretty good in this point. All areas is the most chaotic of them all. That's why we have them there. So in science, it's a good idea to stand on the shoulders of a giant. Science has been open source since the first journals were invented. You build your ideas on the shoulders of the previous giants. In technology, the only reason to stand on the shoulders of an elder giant is to crush the elder giant. And in art, it's a very bad idea to stand close to anybody, okay? So there are extreme modes of thinking. You can call them left brain, right brain. I know the brain is much more complicated than this, but somehow these two extremes are typified in there. By whatever measure you pick, and the book goes into this, technology is always in between science and art. But essentially, what these are different ways of seeing the world. Different pair of glasses that you have of seeing the world. And there are areas where these domains never completely cleaved. Architecture could be one, design is another one. So in there, if you assign science as discover, technology as invention, and science and art as creation, which is contestable that, design covers spectrum spanning those. And that's why I was so glad to be able to work with Bruce Mau on this project. Bruce Mau is a world-famous designer. He's probably someone who transformed what design is. He has worked with people like Frank Gehry, Rem Koolhaas, has done all the books for the Getty Research Institute, for Larry Gagosian's gallery, and this is a display on how the book looks like. We had to battle several conceptions that book publishers have. There is an opening sequence of book, and then one of the best comments I got out of the book recently was, we want the book open in our place just to be inspired. The role of the book is to inspire you. So, and the unit of the book is basically 2 pages, okay? Which creates a problem if you want to go digital, but we can clearly see how digital expansions could go. So it's a heavily curated set of images. And what inescapably happens when you have this augmented view of the world, you have these 2 simultaneous pair of glasses, is that you are going to have conflicting views. And unless you are really naive, most problems do not really allow for just one clean silver bullet interpretation. There will be conflicting things that you have to balance. And this brings me to the second point of the book, even though I will go much, is explaining complexity. And the most important thing to explain here first is the difference between complicated and complex. A watch, a clock, is complicated. Every part has been part of a design, and every part fulfills a role. And if you don't want the system to go down, like in a nuclear sub, you want to back up every part one or twice, okay? There is no adaptation. There is a blueprint. There is a user manual. There is a guide for repairs. Complicated systems are engineered systems. There are systems in which we may have engineered all the parts, but we do not engineer the whole. An example is the internet. And those systems, they are robust. They can fail. The internet is failing all the time, but doesn't go down completely. They are adaptable. They can learn. Biological systems are more in the category of complex. There are parts that could fulfill different roles. Stem cells could be one. And they have the property of able to surprise us. You can study a fish to death and never imagine that fish will organize in schools. You can study a neuron to death and never be able to explain emergence. So from the parts, you go into emergence. There are lessons from complex systems, lots of them accumulated over the last maybe 20 years. And one is that chaos and order can coexist. And that's a very powerful idea that goes under the name of complementarity. And also, super important to anybody run organizations, is that organization can emerge without a central control. You want the map, but you want to give the possibility of emergence. So the ability of reconciling viewpoints, opposite viewpoints, is an idea that has been around for almost 100 years in quantum mechanics. Light could be a particle when it interacts with matters, a wave when it interacts with transferring a medium. Which one is it? Actually, it's both. Okay? Depends on what you want the question to be. So emergence and blueprint can coexist. That's a very important idea in organizations. Now, the book has a whole chapter on lessons that cross domains, and you can sit in one of the domains, let's say art, and give lessons that are generic, and I will focus on those. So the lessons could be the ones that you see there. And I'll pick a couple of them. Let me just go through these. These are a series of lithographs by Picasso. There are 11 in total. I'm showing just a few in here. And this is the last one in my show. But if you are paying idea to the dates, you'll discover that that was the first, and this one was the last. And the point that I'm trying to make in here, you have to be able, this is not something that I can give you a lesson now and you can walk away and next you will be transformed. There are people who are very good to see simplicity in complexity, and there are people who are good in seeing complexity and simplicity. And you have to be able to train yourself to do both. Another lesson, these are, again, having to the idea that there's no sudden epiphany in most art. These are studies for La Danse by Matisse. The final painting is, well, there are two versions. One is in the MoMA, the other is in the Hermitage, St. Petersburg, is this one. But Matisse was not always inspired to go pick a brush and do something amazing. So sometimes he painted what he saw in his studio. In this case, he painted the painting. This is another one. So what's the lesson in here? Inspiration is overrated. You have to work like hell. And this is something that we can learn from artists, that most of artists fly without a net, okay? Another lesson in here. This is at the MoMA. This is all done with found objects that Picasso found in his studio. The head is two toy cars. What's the lesson in here? Adapt and adopt. Or it's quoted in this thing by Picasso, the bad artist copy, great artist steal. Many technologies are a blend of things that you're stealing, but once you see them integrated, once you see them in the whole, you cannot see the part, you see the whole. So there are examples of places where this nexus combination of talents has emerged. Apple has been one. The main thing that Steve Jobs maybe had going for him He could understand Johnny Ives. He was his soulmate. But he could also understand Tim Cook. He could understand the value of both. But Star Wars and everything that happened with Lucas, I would say, is a great example of the intersection of art, technology, and science. So the whole point of the book is to inspire. And yeah, we go through life with one successful pair of glasses. Many people in this room have been trying to augment that, but many people stay with a pair of glasses. And the question is, having the possibility of adding a pair of glasses will broaden our horizons so much. Thank you so much.
Gracias, Julio. So sincere thanks. I think you can see why Julio has been running a fantastic school, and I'm proud to be an alum. So we learned from Julio to crush the giants and steal to be great. I guess those are sort of the punchlines. Also, that wonderful quote that everybody makes from Isaac Newton about standing on the shoulders of giants, we have imagined that that has something to do with a humility. It turns out that it did not. Isaac Newton was not notorious for his humility. What was going on at the time was Isaac Newton, as is well known as well, was about 4'10". He was very of short stature, and he was being lampooned and made fun of by competitors in the United Kingdom, which is also not an unusual occurrence. And in riposte, he said to him, "Yes, but sir, I stand on the shoulders of giants."